Good afternoon. Welcome to the Marion City Council work session for December 19th, 2017. First thing we have for discussion on the agenda is under police and fire. Chief, okay.
Congratulations. And you're off the list. You the man. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. There's 10 coming around. There'll be extras. So, over the last few years, the radio system in the state of Iowa has begun to merge systems. Counties are beginning to link to each other. Johnson County is now linked to Lynn County. Lynn County is now linked to Black Hawk County. And it's all been done on informal handshakes and understanding of good faith. Over the last 3 years, they've been working on a document called a SARA, Shared Area Radio Agreement. And basically what it does is it puts in place a set of guidelines for the counties and the radio systems that are under different management to come together and be able to share the radio transmissions across counties. When it's all complete, the entire state of Iowa will be connected in a radio system. It creates better, what's the word I'm looking for, redundancy in the system. So if one goes down, another comes up. If you're traveling across the state, if you have a pursuit, as you move into other jurisdictions, your radios work across the state of Iowa. It's a work in progress. What the Shared Area Radio Agreement is, it was actually drafted and produced in conjunction with the Johnson County officials and the Lynn County officials to come together to a common understanding of the general basics of how the radio system is managed. It allows a basic organizational structure to be built up. There are clauses in there that allow us to opt out, and there are certain parameters that are put into place basically to oversee the management of the infrastructure of the radio system. It does not bind us to anything other than an operating structure. This document, I am not asking for approval on Thursday. I think I'll defer that to the next council session. I want you to be able to review it. It's really extensive, and it goes back to years of back and forth to put this together, and it is a work in progress, and it will evolve. Cedar Rapids has yet to give their final comment on it, so it's in final version, but there may be modifications. That's why I'm asking you to delay it a couple more weeks, and it's just going to need the mayor's signature. Deputy Chief Slagle authored just a brief memo that outlines what it is that we're asking the mayor to sign. It's very technical, but basically what it does is it just gives us a basic framework for the operation of the radio system itself.
Okay. Any
Hope I did okay with that, because it's a very confusing document. But given everything that goes into it, with the gentleman that drafted it have been involved in it since its inception, and it makes sense to the people that it needs to make sense to. So.
Loved it. I thought it was great. That was right down my alley.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you understand, because I'm not going to sit up here and say I understand everything about it. I've been briefed on it. I've read it. I understand the basics of it, and I'm comfortable with our mayor endorsing it after I get a little more input from the other cities to make sure it's not going to change.
I did have a question, though.
Yes, sir.
Does that include like the highway patrol and the federal people?
Yes, I think the highway patrol is on a disparate system.
It's on a separate system.
I believe so, yes.
So it doesn't include them yet.
No, but eventually it will be. They'll be mandated.
It's them that hasn't adopted this P25 system yet.
Correct. I believe that's correct, Joe.
Yeah. So, but I didn't know if the federal people.
You know, I think where the feds come into play is if we have task forces, what we do is we allow them to get on the system with their repeaters, and it's outlining their access and what they can and can't do.
Okay.
So no financial component to this in any way?
That all happens in in the 911 board and the Lynn County Radio Governance Board is really where the rubber meets the road with that as far as budgeting. Lynn County is responsible for Lynn counties. Johnson County is responsible for Johnson counties. And what this document does is it spells out how we connect them.
Yep.
And the limitations on when they're connected
Operation.
and what we do, so we don't affect each other.
Okay. Any questions for the chief?
Thank you, Chief.
Okay. Hope I did good with that because, like I said, it's very technical. It's been in Evolve for quite a few years, and this is what they have. So.
Okay. Thank you. Before we move on, did anyone have any questions on anything prior to that that's not highlighted on the agenda? Any questions on anything?
Your Honor, I would like to bring one thing up. I wish that there would be a longer period of time for the issuance of bills to be paid rather than that same week almost, because if we get them on Tuesday, that doesn't give you much time to go to the clerk's office and ask for explanations on stuff, and maybe another cycle before we vote on, before you vote on acceptance and paying of bills.
Has anyone else experienced any issues like that? I mean, we get the materials by the Friday prior, and then
Sometimes.
I think most times, yeah.
But
There
I think
may be
that
an
there's
exception to that.
more time needed to be able to inquire as to, because just the explanation on the statements that we get is very, very,
And there's a lot there to look at, too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not,
Usually by the time they
Downplaying
get
that.
to the finance office, it's already been maybe issued 10 days prior to that, and there is kind of like a 30-day deadline or something on a lot of those bills. So if we were to hold them one more council session, we would be probably paying a lot of them late. I mean,
We
we know
would
it
be in
doesn't
a
give you a lot of
situation-
time, but there's just not a lot of time we have to process them either.
well, I've spoken to a couple other city managers, and they said they have never heard of such a thing about, getting it one day and then paying them 2 days later. So,
would it help if they were organized in a different way?
I don't know, it's just that the description of what is payable is so minute, because it's just, in some cases, it's just, travel. Okay, where? For what, And
Yeah, when you're limited to just so many characters, you can only put on
I
so much
understand that, Wes,
information
but
there.
what I'm saying is, we need the time to be, you need the time to be able to question. I mean, after all, this is not your money, this is their money, and this is, I think, is very important, and I think people are starting to really question some of this stuff that's going through. I have spoken. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay?
Well, one thing on that, I would assume every single purchase is approved by a department head, correct? So every purchase has to be approved by somebody.
Yeah, anything that requires a purchase order has to go through approval processes, and there's different levels based on the amount of spending authority. For example, the department heads have a different level of spending authority than I do. If it exceeds theirs, but it's underneath $15,000, it would come to me. Anything over $15,000 would come to the city council. The other ones would be expenses associated with various contracts that the city might have underway. But I'm thinking about things like utility bills to Alliant and stuff like that are just regular recurring bills, or simply budgetary line items that will go against a particular budget line item.
So there is a set protocol for all bills and how they're approved and paid, and
Yep. Yeah, and I know that the timelines are tight, but with the finance department, a lot of times what they will take a look at is making sure that we don't incur any late fees or penalties or anything like that for making sure that we move the bills through in a timely manner. And so a lot of the places that would invoice us don't give you a very long timeline before they'll start imposing some of those late fees.
And even after there's approval, there's nothing that says, it's not, if something does get noticed that is question, that we question or that somebody questions, we can always go back and ask about it, even if it's after it's been approved.
We normally will not
And-
release
and
the
get
checks
more
until the
information.
Friday after council meeting.
Pardon?
We don't release the checks until the Friday after the council meeting. But yeah, even if once it's been paid, there's no reason if there's a question, you couldn't come to us.
But even if it's been paid, we can still go back and
Right.
Well, now,
get all the information and make sure that it was proper.
I don't, personally, I don't think it's, we're getting on Friday, we take action that following Thursday. I think that's plenty of time, personally, because I don't think to ask to do, a full, another cycle for that much time, that's a long time, to have bills sitting out there to get processed, to get paid. So I personally don't have any, because these bills we got on Friday, for me, I went through all of them. If I had any issues, I would, felt that was plenty of time for me to, because because I'm in this field, I know what it takes to get bills paid. I know all the hoops you got to jump through and the levels, and it's not that a lot of these haven't gone through. They're either it's already a previous contract that the council has approved. It's either a purchase order that has our prior authorization before it was ordered. So a lot of those are so routine. Approvals have already happened previously. So, the timelines, I don't have an issue with personally. So.
Thanks for that. Other questions or comments on that? Okay, on to parks. Mike?
Okay, on the agenda under Parks, we have a professional service agreement with Burbach Aquatics. The service agreement would be our next step in analyzing and trying to come up with a repair plan for the pool vessel and the leak that we have in that area of the pool. We've gone about as far as we can with our staff, and we've done extensive televising of the water lines underneath the pool as far as we can go. We worked with Roto-Rooter and Ryan's crew to do that televising and to try to come up with some areas that we think that might be causing the leak. But now we need to go to that next step and have a professional company that works in that aquatics design realm to help us with our next steps and where do we go from there. Help us to come up with that plan to try to really nail down where the leak is, and then from there work with us to come up with that repair plan for the pool. So that's basically that first step is what that professional agreement, service agreement encompasses to help us with, starting to put together that plan to get to construction, repair design.
Questions?
When are they coming out to do that?
Well, once we have the agreement in place, and actually we've already been communicating with them, and they've been looking at our pool plans, those type of things. So they'll start immediately with looking at the plans and looking at all of the televising videos that we've prepared to date. So they'll start analyzing that information. In the winter season right now, there's not a whole lot of testing we can do. We've winterized the pool for the season. But first thing in the spring, we'll start adding some water and doing some testing and in discussion with them, coming up with a plan of how we start to figure out, through fill and reduce of water where that leak probably is. The one thing that, with discussion and where we're at today too, that helps me feel a little better about where we're at with the pool, having a professional service like Burbach help us out a little bit was, I was always worried that, if we would have a void or a failure underneath the pool and have a collapse in that area with that water. They feel the way that the pool is designed that will not happen, which helps me sleep a little bit at night. But to answer your question, they'll start immediately with that, and actually already have a lot with helping us out.
You anticipated delaying the opening of the pool in this summer?
No, there wouldn't be a delay in opening the pool. Where we would probably be at is if we are able to figure out where that leak is at, whether we feel it's a minor repair that we can get done prior to the season startup, we will do it. If not, we will delay until after the pool season and then do the repair so we don't lose the season. We're always conscientious of the fact that we're losing around 6,000 gallons of water a day at the pool, but to know that with that said, that we're not hurting the pool, underneath the pool, if you will, and creating those voids, I think that we'd be okay to go ahead and run another season and then do that repair, if needed after the pool is shut down at the end of the season.
Mike, is there a hazard, a chemical hazard with the chlorine into the soil, or?
Not, realistically, as far as into the soil, those type of things, I think that would be very minor. Is there some release, Yes, I can't say that there's not, because that basically goes to storm what we're releasing. I have not noticed a negative impact to that extent yet to date with where we're at with that, because basically it runs in storm sewer line and then eventually open ditch area. But I have not noticed that, but it definitely would be a concern, that we'd want to monitor and look at, but not to the degree that I think it's a real negative impact.
You haven't seen dead grass or anything?
No, I guess that's kind of what I was going off of, Joe. I have not noticed anything like that to that extent. And I have not received any type of notification from any of the homeowners, which we usually do. They're pretty aware of the situations around that area if there's something going on. I have not heard anything from anybody to date.
Okay, thank you.
Did you say 6,000 gallons a day?
Yeah. Just to put that in perspective, that's probably the equivalent of filling the pool once over a course of a season. What we're doing there.
Wow. Okay. Other questions? Okay. Thank you. Under engineering?
Thank you, Your Honor. Items 3 and 4 are the public hearing and the award of contract for the Grantwood Trail project. This is the section between 35th Street and Highway 13. This is a DOT-funded project, so the DOT did hold a letting this morning. They did receive 4 bids. The low bid was for $886,365.28, or about 93% of the estimate, so we are down below the $953,000 estimate. The work will begin no later than April 16th of next year and have 75 working days. It's a combination of asphalt, concrete, and we do have some boardwalk that we're putting in over some wetland areas. So it should be an interesting project. We are recommending that we award we're basically concurring with the DOT award to award the contract to Rachi Construction.
In their backyard.
Yeah. I don't think they wanted anybody else to get it, so they didn't want to sit there and watch somebody else work on their property. So.
Right.
We did have a high bid of $1.2 million, so there wasn't quite a spread, but the low bid was a good bid. So. Any questions on that?
So it is surfaced? It will be.
It'll be hard surfaced, yes. Yes.
What about east of Highway 13? Somebody asked me that question.
East of Highway 13 is county. They're in the process of surfacing some of that, I think. I'm not the person to ask, maybe Kesh is, but I think they're working this summer to do some hard surfacing on that section.
Dan's correct. The plan is that east of Highway 13, up just a little past Waldo's Rock Park. The county will be working towards hard surfacing that section next summer.
Okay. Somebody asked me at the office hours at the library on Saturday. So, okay.
Moving on to item number 5, which is the Albert Road Extension, Phase 1. This is a contract we're proposing for Snyder and Associates. I did want to today, though, talk a little bit about, this is the report that they prepared for the overall concept from 7th Avenue North. That did include a lot of information collection, a traffic evaluation report, geotechnical report, wetland delineation. We did a cultural resource investigation and environmental report, hydraulic analysis. They did have a recommendation for the bridge length and width. They did prepare horizontal and vertical profiles for the alignment. They did a lot of several public input sessions and provided right-of-way needs. And that's what brings us to the point now where we would start from north. We're proposing north of approximately 9th Avenue on 2nd Street to prepare construction plans for that section north to where it ends south on Albernet Road, on the new Albernet Road. That would include the bridge design and also a culvert on Central to provide for the low zero rise on the Indian Creek that needs to be done. So that would allow us to get through the permitting, through all the final permitting, through the design and through the letting process with them. That will provide for a contract of $417,450. We'll include all that engineering for us. The project itself is estimated at about $4.86 million. We have not have that fully funded, but I'm hoping that through this process we'll get a better handle on that cost and also have time to hopefully come up with that funding between now and the time we go to letting. So,
What's that estimated timeline?
It'll be at least a year.
A year.
Yeah.
And this would take us right up to the point of construction, this
Yes.
contract.
This would right
And
up
then
to
we'd have
letting.
Then we'd have to fund the construction.
Yes.
Okay.
We do have about $2.8 million currently funded.
Okay.
So there, the contract allows for the letting process as well. What if we end up having to let this in 2 stages for that piece because of, funding-wise?
Yeah.
Would they provide that, or was it one round of letting?
No, the scope of services does provide for splitting the project into 2 divisions or 2 lettings.
Okay.
So if we can only fund so much, we would build the bridge, get that out of the way, get that permitted, get that done, probably do some grading of the approaches, which is pretty extensive, and then get that connected at a future date if that's what council wants to do.
Okay.
So the 4.86 includes the bridge and the estimate?
Yes, that's everything north of 9th Avenue at 2nd Street.
Does that include this engineering cost?
No.
And is this engineering, the 400,000, is that through completion of the project? Is that their fee through, or is that just up to construction?
That is all of their scope of services through letting.
Letting.
We would do everything beyond that as far as project inspection. They would do some design inspection on the bridge and so forth to assist us with that, but beyond that, it's ours. That is at about 8.6% of project cost, which is right. Anything below 10% is a good number. So.
Okay. Other discussion or questions on that?
I guess on a counter-related, we're changing the name of the old Albernet Road since you said it like that, correct?
Well, that's up to council. We came to council, I think planning did at least once and have not been able to resolve that issue.
That's what I didn't remember, is if we had actually made that change.
No.
Yeah, I think staff had recommended that we change the old Albernet to Central Extended.
Very
And then,
Okay.
It didn't get approved.
So that's
first
still
time.
something that needs to be done as well.
yeah, I think it's on Dave Hockett's list. So.
Where does it turn into Albernette? At Boyson?
the 3rd time.
What's that?
Does it turn into Albernette at Boyson?
No, it turns into Albernet down at the bridge.
At the bridge, okay.
It's central beyond that. We would like to extend that up to Boylston, where then there would be a separation of alignment, so. Hopefully we can get that taken care of. There are 4 or 5 owners along there that were pretty vocal about that, but address change is kind of like when you move. I mean, how painful is really that, so.
It is a public safety issue, so.
Yes, EMS.
All right. Any other questions on that one?
So item number 6 is also connected with the Albernet Road Extension Project. It's the second house north of 8th Avenue on the west side. This is the Dennis Steffes property. We have followed our previous policy, I guess I'll put it, to offer 130% of assessed value for that property, which is valued at $127,500. This provides for him to waive all of his federal requirements through 6B that we would have to meet otherwise. They have agreed to an amount of $165,750 at 130%. They would like to close on June 30th of this year. At that point, we would start to look at demolition of that building. It was, believe it or not, built in the 69. It was recognized as having architectural significance as far as a ranch-style 60s home. We will do photo documentation as required by federal law, but that is all we're required to do. It has not been modified much since 69, so they saw it as being architecturally significant. So we are required to do that, and we'll do that prior to demolition. As a side note, we have started the process of getting quotes for demolition of the house, the Bizik property on the northwest corner of 2nd and 8th. As you know, that's being occupied by the previous owner until demolition. So we're recommending purchase of that property for Steffes.
Questions?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Where is the policy that says 130%?
We do not have a written policy. We have a verbal policy that we follow.
I don't think verbal anything will stand up in court. You need written policies.
We have a lot of verbal policies. Council has discussed if they would like a written policy, we would be glad to do that. I think.
Well, I asked
might
for
be
one
looking at that.
probably more than 6 months ago, and I've asked for it, I think, 2 or 3 times and gotten nowhere. And I don't know how interested you are in lawsuits, but there could be nasty lawsuits, and you're going to lose because it's not written.
How would a written policy change things?
Well, I think a written policy, you got to have it so that it is the same throughout. And then you can say, well, this is, past process because this is what it's always been because here it is written.
Staff only follows that policy as a recommendation to council. So we are only negotiating in good stead with the owner at what we think council will react to. If council does not want to approve the 130%, that is their prerogative to do so.
We're not bound by that. It's not law.
No, this is a purchase
agreement. It's not something that's we're required to follow. You negotiate using that as a guideline based on your
past performance,
past actions where the council has approved that purchases based on 130%.
Yeah, at this time you're only approving the agreement based on that recommendation. The closing does not occur until June.
Right. But the council can say, no, we don't think it should be 130% or should.
Right.
And you could also.
Well, I think we've tried that.
But
I think we've tried to say no 130%, and it came back, well, this is what we've always done. And so then everybody folded. And you need written policy, that's all.
I think if you don't have it in a policy, though, then you could possibly negotiate a different amount
we-
for a purchase, otherwise you're set 130, nothing, no
then
other
then you
route.
put unless previously agreed upon to negotiate or whatever, but you gotta have it in writing.
But they also, when these purchases happen, they also are signing a form saying that they're waiving their rights to the whatever B.
Yeah, we've done,
Whatever that is.
Lon's done studies in the past that
6B,
looks at
thank you.
our costs in paperwork and staff time is easily 30% or more. We just feel this is quicker and easier and costs the city less.
I was
in
going
the
to
long
ask
run.
you what that 130% is based on. So you've determined that if we had to go through the other requirements,
6B
requirements, we'd easily get up to that 130% in staff time and costs.
Yep.
So this is a way to just avoid having to do all that.
And we only follow that policy. I think we've probably bought half a dozen properties this way already, so that's the only reason I used it for this property.
Okay. I think the city attorney had a comment.
I was just going to say, Your Honor, there's a reason why real estate transactions such as those are one of the very specific items that are allowed to be held in closed session. By having a written policy like that, it would undermine the city's ability to negotiate at arm's length. We would, I mean, virtually everybody would come in expecting 130%. Councilmember Brandt was absolutely correct in his analysis of that issue. It would hamper us to put that in as an actual formal policy. It's more of a rule of comity that the city does this. There are a number of situations where it would be to the city's benefit and in fact be necessary to negotiate at something less than 130%. So for that reason, I think it would be inadvisable to put that as an actual formal policy.
Thank you. Other comments? Other questions?
Okay, Your Honor. Number 7 is just a discussion informing council that we are proceeding with the 2018 sidewalk assessment project. We are proposing to continue on 29th Street on the east side, north of 12th Avenue as far as we can for the $92,500 available. Thanks, Mike. This is an assessment process, so there is a set process that we have to go through to get the project ready and approved. We are recommending, however, that we do this. It'll almost get us to 18th. If the bids come in good, we'll be able to go all the way to 18th.
Basically, before we get the residents all riled up, we want to make sure you guys are okay with it, because usually they do come in and they want to know why our property, and that's their opportunity for the public hearing to discuss that. And so we just want to make sure you guys are okay with this location before we bring the residents in. One of them is here, and she's okay with it.
Mike, do you just want to go through how the selection is made, the sidewalk committee prioritization
That was going to be my
process?
question.
Sure. So typically what we do is we have a meeting that happens this month. Because we did a lot of this project last year, we actually just did it via email to see if you guys just wanted to continue 29th Street. But what we have is we have 2 citizens. We have someone from Linmar, someone from Marion Independent. We have someone from the planning staff, engineering staff, and a couple others, and we all just look at locations. We have a master sheet that shows lots of locations that don't have any sidewalk at all, and based on that input, they select old parts of town that it wasn't a requirement then to put that sidewalk in. So what happens then is we do an official notice to the property owners. We give them an estimate that says you're going to be assessed $600 depending on the length of their property. And what that number is, it can never go up from whatever that number is that we give each individual property owner. And so that's their preliminary assessment number. Then what we do is we actually let the project, we build the project, and then we do the final assessment. And the final assessment then is based on the bid, but it can't be higher than the preliminary assessment. A lot of times it goes down, we'll estimate high. And then what they do is they have a choice then to pay. They actually have 2 options before we build the project. They can actually put the sidewalk in themselves, or they can let the city do it. It's generally cheaper for them to just let us do it, because we pay for grading, retaining walls, if there's trees that have to come down, all those different aspects. We pay for everything except for half of the sidewalk that goes in. That's all that they're assessed for. If they put it in themselves, they have to pay for all that extra stuff. And then when it's time to pay, if the city puts it in, they have two choices there. They can, if it's $500 or less, then they have to pay it all right away. If it's more than $500, they have the choice of paying it 10 years. It gets put on their taxes, and they can pay it over 10 years, or again, they can just pay that lump sum amount. But that's why it's called an assessment process. It goes on their taxes.
It's paid with in installments, that's with interest?
Yeah, there is interest, and it's generally 10% because we don't want to be a bank. We want them to pay it off. So we set it at the value that we can. So it's generally cheaper for them to go
I
out
don't
and get
remember that there was a lot of...
it. Last year there wasn't, but in previous years there have been.
Yeah.
I would assume most people realize that it's happening
coming.
because we're just continuing on that sidewalk.
Yep.
They may be expecting that it's
Yeah, I would assume.
coming.
This is an annual program the city's done for about 25 years probably, so I think people realize it's fairly established and can anticipate what council will probably do, so.
We have a good memo that we write when we send the preliminary assessment out with them that outlines the entire process for them that they read before they come, and I think that's helped answer a lot of the questions of, what's your options for paying and where are we at in this big process, so.
As with everything, the communication is very important, so, yeah.
Well, there's no sidewalk on here on 12th at all where you're pointing?
No, so we stopped sidewalk right here on the east side on 12th Street last year, and so this would just be continuing that sidewalk on the east side all the way up.
Okay. It would be just on one side of the street then?
Yeah, just be on the east side. Eventually it'll be on both sides, but we just picked the side that's easiest.
Okay.
But I have a question.
Yeah.
So if it's a $92,000 budget a year, how much would you estimate that those homeowners are going to pay in total between all, however many there are?
We haven't figured that out yet, but I can send you the memo that shows that stuff that we've sent previously that shows what portion the city pays, what portion the homeowner pays.
I'm just curious of how much per project is typically paid by the homeowner.
About 20%.
20?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say those assessments are somewhere between $200 and $600 a piece. Just kind of a guess. I know that's a big number, but they're pretty insignificant what the assessed amount to the properties ends up being.
Again, all that we assess is
Right.
It's a 4-foot wide sidewalk, so we only assess 2 foot wide, 4 inches thick. If we're replacing their driveway, if we're cutting down trees, if we're regrading,
Retaining walls.
some of this we have to do that. The city picks up all that additional cost. All they pay for is 2 foot wide, 2 inches thick.
Right.
We can by state law assess for more than that, but the councils in the past have just picked that amount. We can assess up to 25% of the value of the property.
25% of the value of the property?
Yep.
Holy cow.
That's like you can do streets with assessment if you want to. Yes.
Wow.
I think this is a great program, and especially if you're one of the residents actually have to have a retaining wall put in. This is a great, deal with.
We have our ADA transition plan, which some of you may remember, that we established within that budgets. We'll have to actually amend that soon to create more years within it. That 92.5 is what was set within this fiscal year. It is relatively small for the amount we have to attack over the next 20 years, but that is a minimum amount, and that's what we use for budgeting. So.
Yeah, it used to be our budget was like $30,000, so we didn't get much put in for that.
Yeah, the west side of 10th Avenue or 10th Street and Indian Creek Road, that's a classic one where retention wall and curved, and I mean it had everything. So they got a good deal out of that.
Yeah, that was worked out well because the owner was very interested in getting some stuff done there. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions on the other items on the engineering agenda that aren't starred? Okay. On the planning?
Did you notice that he looked at Mike for everything in the future.
So this will be my last Tuesday meeting. So.
Don't tear up.
Try not to look so disappointed.
Yeah, right.
So on Thursday, there's going to be 3 public hearings under the Planning Department's agenda. The first one is the realignment on amendment to the future land use map of the Marion Comprehensive Plan. It's the realignment of Echo Hill Road. I'd just point out that this is not a engineered alignment. So the drawings I'm going to show you are just general alignments across what roadway across our comprehensive plan. When we generally do a specific alignment, which we've done for like 44th Street is one we've done, it's an engineered drawing. It shows exactly where it's going to go, and it's been much more thought out from the perspective of how it transects the community. So as the council's aware, we do have our comprehensive plan. If you want, I can refresh. No. We went through that extensively, didn't we? So the alignment of, it says Artesian here, but really it's Echo Hill Road. Swings up north. We have to explain this to almost everybody that looks at our comprehensive plan. When Hunter's Ridge went through, it really went right through an alignment for Echo Hill Road. So that's why you see a large northern swing of the road across the north side of Hunter's Ridge, and then it goes east and hooks down to Artesian, and then eventually goes to Highway 13 over in this vicinity. So that's the current alignment. As we got into the specifics of the final plat or final platting of Hunter's Ridge furthest north development, there was a desire to shift that alignment a little bit to the north. The yellow line represents, the yellow line represents what that was to some degree on the planning documents. As you can see, this would have created a pinch point when it really hit correctly. When it hit Lucor, it creates some problems. So what's been done is the engineering alignment kind of smooths out that transition. It also shifted the road a little bit further north so that you weren't front loading. A good example of this would be 29th Avenue, where you're front loading houses onto an arterial. The driveways, we don't want to do that again, so we shifted it north a little bit, or the developer asked to do that. So these roads, these lots here in the final development plan would be double fronted, but their driveways would all be limited from the future Echo Hill Road. So there wouldn't be any access to individual lots on Echo Hill Road. I think Councilman Speaks could speak to the issues that's created over the years.
So is the black is the proposed?
Yes.
And the yellow is the old?
Yes.
Okay.
It does impact the properties to the east by shifting it off the property line. I think we've received notice from John Bogert regarding his concerns with that, and he's voicing some opposition to the realignment moving to the north. So that's the first part of this development is a public hearing on the amendment to the future land use map of the city's comprehensive plan to provide for that realignment. It's almost more of a more precisely identifying the road. I do think it would be in the best interest of the city to go forward and actually set that alignment with an engineering plan. It is getting into some of the areas that are undeveloped and may not be developed for some time, but it would be in our best interest to do that at some point. So ultimately, you'll see the next public hearing is regarding the preliminary plat and preliminary site development, or the preliminary site development plan for this area, and it'll show this virtually the same thing in here. It's changed a little bit, but not much.
So is that now going to go through someone's property there instead of it going in between two properties? Is it
Correct.
Now?
It would yes, it would tee in.
Who owns that property?
I'm not sure the name right offhand. There's a farmstead there, but they were provided notice of the change. I don't think we received correspondence from that. Actually, I was just going to say that is Blackford.
That's why I was wondering who
yeah,
it is.
And they are the
They're the ones that wanted to change it.
Yeah, that's correct. I think it's rented right now.
Well, they're probably selling it off too.
And there is some responsibility with this shift that comes, and they've agreed to the responsibility that comes with shifting that road off the property line that currently exists. So.
When I looked at this, I thought, oh no, another 29th Avenue, but
No, we would not want to create that.
No.
So
my question though, Tom, is that this road's what, over a mile from Tower Terrace? A mile north of Tower Terrace, probably?
No.
Half mile? I'd say a half mile.
Yeah. I just wondered if we ought to be thinking about that Echo Hill Road being wider, build out a little bit larger, wider, make it a higher tier arterial type thing.
It's designed to be an arterial. I think it's a 80, or did we go that far?
Yeah, it's part of the major streets plan. We'll also have to amend the major streets plan, which includes all of our arterials and collectors and major and minor arterials. I think it's a major, which doesn't allow parking or access, so it doesn't have to be very wide.
Okay.
The only difference that's changed over the last 5 years is bike trails, bike lanes, and side paths. I think we have enough right of way to add those. But the pavement itself is 33 or 34, so we have enough for bike lanes.
Okay. I was just thinking, as long as we're doing this section, to think about, because it'll be another nice east-west access road.
Yeah, it won't look like Tower Terrace, but it will
Right.
operate as a arterial.
And then County Home is what, another mile, or half a mile?
There's actually within our network I think it's another minor between here and County Home Road, east-west. We've looked at all that north, south, east, west grid there.
Yeah.
It's in the major streets.
You're mindful of that. That's what I.
Yep.
Thanks, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions on number 3? For the next 2 items, I'm turning over the gavel to Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay. Any questions on 4? Number 5?
Item 5 is then the actual preliminary site development plan for Hunters Ridge North First Edition, and that's a portion of what I just showed you. I do think it's important to point out, just to go back to that drawing.
So that whole development, is it condominiums or?
No, so the area that's being currently platted under the item that we're just talking about, the Hunters Ridge First, is this line south, okay? So this area, we're just seeing a concept for how this would develop out. And what we wanted to do is get to the point where we didn't have a 29th Avenue situation. Sometimes when you develop to a property line, that's kind of what happened when 29th Avenue was put in. There's a decision point on how that occurs. And at that point, they decided to go with the access. We're saying we wanted to make sure that arterial had limited access and that it was developable, so that we required them to provide us with a build-out plan concept for how that could move forward. Certainly not a preliminary plat, but it does identify a concept for it. So it goes to this, the plat that we'll look at is going to go to this line here. So you're basically going to see this east-west street. It's not the arterial, though. I think that's probably what you saw in the packet, Joe, that raised an eyebrow.
Right. I'm like, oh, no.
That's why I want to go back to that drawing just to verify.
It took me 5 minutes to back out of my driveway.
Yeah, I can definitely understand your concern. So the reason we're moving forward with the preliminary site development plan on this is because it's still a part of the Hunters Ridge overall development plan, which was zone PDR. And so here you can see is the plan being proposed. So, that arterial is up here somewhere. Mm-hmm. So this is a street that's going to connect Winslow to Lucor. I think the staff and the developer have some concerns with this becoming a cut-through. This is a solution that they've proposed that's going to have a privately built but publicly dedicated mini roundabout in the development. So they're proposing this as a part of their development plan. I think it's goes to show that there's some growth in this, and there's some identification that it is a traffic calming mechanism, and I do think that that's going to, you know, kind of help with the cut through traffic that can very easily come with a development like this. The property is being developed with single-family residential lots, except for on the east end, where there's 5 duplexes being proposed along that street at the intersection of Lucor. The Planning Commission's reviewed this at their last meeting. They were supportive. They were also supportive of the realignment as well. So it comes to the council with a recommendation from the Planning Commission to proceed.
Tom, you might you might mention that there will be 5 additional driveways on the east side of Winslow. There's really no way to develop that parcel without doing that. We don't normally let driveways anymore on Winslow Road, but it was necessary here. So.
Well, I think it was always part of the preliminary plat.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not like it's not been preliminary. It's not something new. So.
What's the closest one to the road from the roundabout west there? The closest driveway?
It'd be right here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that like 50 feet, 100 feet? Or?
Oh, no, it'd be probably 100, I'm going to say 120 to 150 feet.
Okay. So that's enough room for them to, you know.
Yeah. So. There shouldn't be much stacking that way, I wouldn't hope. But yeah, hopefully it will block the driveway. That would be pretty
play chicken
uncommon
with
for
the
that
Linmar
area.
school buses.
Yeah.
When I back out.
Yeah.
They don't give.
No, I wouldn't imagine so.
Joe, also with a mini roundabout in a residential area like this, it'll have very short splitter islands. It won't be like on 29th Avenue.
Yeah, okay.
But I think it'd also be a good thing to point out that these are not what's in Hiawatha.
Yeah, right.
I want the council to be aware. I'll mention that on Thursday too, because I think everybody that's driven the ones in Hiawatha relates them to a roundabout, and those were a solution after the road was constructed. So you know, just so that they're designed to a newer standard than what those were. So
this one will be the size of the one on 29th and 35th, or.
Yeah, we haven't gone through the design process. It might be a little smaller, just given the fact the speed's 25 there. Will be 25. We'll have to go through a design process, but it'll be similar.
Okay.
Any other questions on that?
Will these folks be in the Hunter's Ridge covenants and all that, or will they do their own?
I honestly don't know. I would assume that they're going to be they'll have some of that because it's being developed within the original preliminary plat. But you know, we don't really get too involved in some of the covenants language. But
right.
I mean, that's something maybe to ask them on Thursday.
Yeah.
Probably not.
The final public hearing is the preliminary site development plan for Indian Creek, the Ridge at Indian Creek Addition. So this is the area located north of the extension of Tower Terrace Road, east of 35th Street. So it's the duplex area of the preliminary plat for the Ridge. You'll notice later in the agenda the preliminary plat is also on for approval. So this is a project being proposed by Abode Construction. I think we talked about this a little bit in the past. I'm not going to go into great detail, except to point out that one of the questions that came up between Planning Commission and Council, I think when we talked about this, was a 5-foot setback. That's not a part of this. They've removed some of the lots. They're 7-foot setbacks, so that's not even an issue within the development. So it's just the duplex lots are identified in the yellow area. The rest of it's single family. Everything's serviceable, and there shouldn't be any issues. It's consistent with the neighborhood in the Indian Creek plan. With this access point, there's a right-in, right-out access point, or 3/4 access point here that'll go down into the commercial portion of that neighborhood Indian Creek plan. As a quick sidebar, we've got RDG on board with starting that process. Todd Wood is very interested in getting that zoning portion of that complete so that there's no holdup if there's a potential development in the spring. Clearly, with this moving forward, there's going to be some interest in that area for development, so we want to get that done. We got a conference call tomorrow with RDG to talk about how to move that forward quickly. So there'll probably be conversation at the council meeting in January, and hopefully we'll be at Planning and Zoning Commission with some zoning recommendations to move that forward, probably to the council in March. So just so the council's aware. I know Todd's pretty excited about getting that going as soon as possible. So if you hear some conversation about that, we are trying to move that forward. Any specific questions on this?
Was that good? So that you said there's a right in, right out, and then a full intersection?
This would be a full?
That'll be signalized, or?
No. And this is a 3/4, so right in, right out, and left in. No left out. From this, sorry. You won't be able to take a left this way.
Right.
You're still thinking.
No, I got it. I'm just.
Eventually will be.
Will eventually
someday.
Be signalized.
Yeah, probably 20 years.
Oh. Okay.
Here,
I just thought with retail and commercial to the south, that maybe it'd be a signalized intersection.
Yeah, the commercial properties to the south would have to do traffic studies to justify that, and would probably be, if it's called for, they would have to pay for it, at least under our current policy.
Gotcha.
Tom, is there something the council can change that would eliminate that people wanting to do that 5 foot where it wouldn't even be an option for them to?
Under the PUD, when we do a plan development, that's an option that they're afforded to bring to the council. When we discussed that the last time, even when they brought that forward as an option, they were still proposing to maintain a total of 14 feet between the units. They just wanted to be able to go to 5 foot on one and then be able to, provide a larger on the next one. They run into some building issues when they get them too close. The fire department and building are going to require more expensive construction. So there are other reasons why they wouldn't want to do that. But that would always come to you. We do not have a 5 foot setback
I'm just wondering
allowance.
where it would be something that could be changed that wouldn't allow a 5 foot at all. I mean, that wouldn't even be an option.
We currently don't allow it unless they try to do it, unless they request it through the planning PUD process. Like if you just go straight zoning, there's no 5 foot option.
10 feet's pretty close to, especially like if there was a fire, that'd for sure melt the siding right off of it.
It would really add to the cost of the construction, because they would have to add, instead of a 1 hour wall, 2 hour wall, or a 3 hour wall. So it would really add, so there's no benefit.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Thanks. Any other questions for Tom on this? Okay, I think.
Your Honor, at this point, since Mr. Trahern is up here, Paul Draper, who is back at Mayo today, called and said, would I please present this possibly so that we, at least it's in the works. Cedar Rapids apparently has an ordinance which disallows any garage to be built taller than the house it is close to. And apparently there will be people here Thursday about the Anderson barn. And I don't know if you all seen this, and I wouldn't want to live next to it, but then there was another thing, that property within the city limits, which is still zoned agricultural, and allow that to be grandfathered in, but on the sale or any further, that zoning would have to be in agreement with surrounding zoning. so that you're getting rid of the agricultural zoning within city limits, eventually. Those were the two things he wanted brought up.
And if I can comment a little bit on that, on Thursday, I do know, and you may have already received it, I don't know that for sure, but there's a gentleman that's going to present a request to the council to have that portion of the ordinance amended.
I think this is who he was referring to.
And so you'll see that, and I guess just to preface that, in the event there is a desire, would be great to have a motion from the council directing, staff to take a look at that and present options. That would be the way to bring that forward and get us to do something. Without that direction, we're going to be a little bit floundering. So specifically as it relates to the accessory structures. So
That Bob Buckley that's coming?
yes, that's the gentleman that I spoke
He
with.
stopped at the house yesterday.
Oh, okay.
And said his concern was there's another property east of that
Correct.
one that's agriculture as well.
Yep.
And he's concerned that somebody may buy that and build another big garage.
Well, that's what Paul said, that at least if it's in the works, you can forestall
Right, yeah.
having to allow them to build like that.
Tell him to see Randy.
Yeah, there's a little gift to the incoming council, right? Oh, you guys are here. They probably knew it was coming.
Okay. Any questions on anything else under planning? Administration?
Yep, item number one, the city has received a request from Prospect Meadows that we consider advancing part of our pledge towards that project. If you've seen the area out there, you've seen that they've had some dirt work going on. There are two pieces in play. They have an agreement with the DOT for a RISE grant to install the road through the site connecting to Highway 13 and County Home Road, and then they have the construction of the ball field portion of the complex. What they would like to do is to be able to collect some of the pledges so that they don't have to borrow any money or anything like that to make the payments for the work that they've already had done. They have agreements with CRBT to go ahead and secure financing for the project, but the central issue is that the main portion of it is a USDA approved guaranteed loan. Under that program, when they make their first draw, USDA advances the entire amount, and then you start paying interest on the entire amount. It's not like a construction loan where you can only draw out the amount that you need. And so they don't want to pull against that $5 million loan amount and start paying interest on that all the way during the construction period. The city has it programmed into our calendar year 2018 bond for $600,000 for this contribution, and we have actually, I think Amanda noted that it was about $305,000 of the piece of the pledge coming from the local option sales tax sitting in the account to go to that. And so we have the ability to do it, but to do it and reimburse ourselves out of a future bond issue, the City Council has to pass a resolution noting that we intend to reimburse ourselves from that bond issue. It has to be done within 60 calendar days of the payment. The last time we did this was for the Uptown Parking Project, because we did a similar thing where we went ahead and paid for the property with the intent to reimburse ourselves from this coming bond issue. We only broke it up so that the city could maximize our interest rate. They wanted me to put that request in front of the council, see if you would consider that, because it will have a pretty positive impact on the project as far as removing their costs. I believe the Lynn County Conservation Board is putting theirs in, and they have, to date, I think, received donations on the private side of about $1.6 million for those pledges that are coming in.
When will we be doing the 2018 bonds?
We would anticipate starting that process in January, probably at the second calendar meeting in January, so that we could receipt them before the end of the fiscal year.
So, what will we not do? Will we, to fund this? We won't incur any interest on anything by doing this up front, that we, instead of them incurring interest, we would be incurring interest.
The only thing we would incur is we would lose a little bit of our interest earnings for the period of the 3 months that we would normally get for the money that's sitting in our accounts. I think the last time I talked to Wes, that was about 1.3, 1.4%. But versus them not incurring interest of 6.5%, it's quite a big benefit towards the bottom line, the more that they can pay for of the project without having to take on debt at this point.
Okay, any thoughts on that, questions?
Can you, excuse me, can you break that down again? You said there was how much in local option sales tax money?
Looks like there's 305,000 of the 500,000 that would come out of local option sales tax available now. And then, like I said, we had programmed in 600,000 of the city's pledge for this coming bond issue.
The total city pledge was 1.25
million.
yeah.
Yep.
So this 600 would be about half of what we had pledged.
If you do the full 800, it's not quite 2/3.
Yeah.
And just, again, for the benefit of the council, when we start looking at the number of people that they're projected to bring to this area, the hotel motel revenue that it'll generate will be somewhere between 250 and 280,000 a year in full swing. So we'll recover that in our pledge in very short order.
I guess the reason I ask it is if it's going to come on next year's bond and they want the remainder, will that put us in a bind or to have to bond for the next year? Or
Now, what we would likely do is we'll have to take a look at the balance that we have in the local option sales tax account, because 500,000 of that pledge was to come out of future collections of local option sales tax.
Right.
So as we continue to receipt dollars in local option sales tax, the additional dollars would become available. The council could choose to advance it out of local option sales tax if we have a balance sitting in there, and then just recoup it from those future payments.
okay.
That's one of the things we really tried to do with the CIP process, is get a really good handle on our cash flow needs for these projects so that we're not borrowing money 2 years ahead of when we need it, for example.
Right. That's what I didn't want to get us into, was having the 2 years of borrowing for this.
Right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, other comments or questions on that? Any questions on the remainder of the administration agenda?
So does the mayor get to hit the first ball out of the park
Yeah.
when they build it? Can you? Or throw the first pitch or something?
It'll be fun. There's a number of appointments and reappointments to boards, so also look at those.
Do we, just real quick, do we know how much we're saving with the Involta?
Yeah, it's about a 20% savings because of the structured pricing has gone down.
Very nice.
So by going to them, have we essentially stopped trying to put servers to cover the police and them, or do we still have a backup servers on the police?
Do you want to field that? The Involta has disaster recovery plans, and when we've looked at it, we've looked at alternatives, for example, to have the disaster recovery server at some of their other locations. They have buildings in Ohio and all around the area. We also, we'd have to have Terrell come down and give you a more detailed explanation about how it works. But the big thing that we're looking at with the police department is every time they come to you with camera upgrades or something like that, the storage needs increase. I think we have 12 or 16 terabytes out at the police department right now, and we're constantly running 90 to 95% full. We just can't add storage quickly enough to be able to keep up with what they need. And the big advantage to going out to Involta is that they're on a much more regimented schedule for hardware upgrades and everything that we are. There's the hardware that we're running on our systems on out there right now, there's no way we could afford to put that in if we were doing it on our own.
I guess that was the forward leading question then, is that, you know, if they're keeping up with the storage requirements, is that something the city ought to, try to keep up with on their own servers, or?
And that's one of the things that the police department has looked at, is that some of these services, for example, the body cameras, they're moving away from buying the equipment and having local storage into going to a cloud-based system where you get the equipment and then you pay an annual service, and as part of that annual service fee, they provide the storage for you. So we'll be responsible for less and less of that going forward. And if my memory serves me correctly, back when Terrell did this original analysis for the migration, we were going to save about $8,000 a year versus buying our own equipment and maintaining our own equipment, and that was before this 20% cost reduction.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Good. You happy?
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on anything on the agenda?
Well, as all of you knew, the Corridor Business magazine has chosen our mayor to be one of the leading people in the community, and so I wanted to congratulate. Number 2, yes.
Most influential.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good job.
It's a reflection of the community we live in. Thank you very much.
And a lot that you do.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, we'll see everyone on Thursday.